Welcome back to the Golden State with Mates post-game live after the Warriors' best and biggest win of the short NBA season to date. A 118-112 victory over the Boston Celtics at TD Garden. Such an impressive performance. If you're in the chat, you can see there's already some comments. I'll read them out in a second. Feel free to share your thoughts and I'll read them out here on the live stream. But wow, what a performance from the Warriors, proving that their 6-1 start was no fluke. Of course, many people believing, and including myself, to be honest, a bit hesitant on who this team truly is or was after the first 7 games with their 6 wins coming against lesser opposition, it must be said. This was always going to be an early litmus test against the best team in the league on their home floor, the reigning champs. And the Warriors, it wasn't just the fact they won. It was the fact they took Boston's biggest punch in the second half and remained calm, remained collected, and still managed to prevail. It was huge. Let's just recap the game a little bit here. So Steve goes to a different starting lineup yet again, replaces Gary Payton II, I think, with Moses Moody. So it's Steph, Moody, Wiggs, Draymond, TJD. Horrible start. Nothing going offensively for either team aside from Derek White for the Celtics, who had 3 threes, was fouled, I think, on another one from Moses. So he had 12 points in the first 5 minutes. The Celtics led 14-3. Golden State had nothing going offensively. And to be fair, for the majority of the first half, neither team had anything going offensively. This was for the 8th game of the season. It was a playoff atmosphere. It was a playoff intensity, a playoff level, because we saw both defenses really dominate. We saw both offenses really have to get into a half-court setting. I thought the transition defense, like whenever each team was trying to push and get into transition because they knew that was going to be their best form of offense, I thought both teams did really well to track back. There was that play in the second quarter where Steph tried to throw an outlet pass. Derek White hustled back, got the steal. I think the Celtics might have got a bucket, and then Steve took a timeout and was actually really angry at Steph for that attempted pass. But that was kind of how the game was going. Both teams knew that they had to try and push in transition when they could, and that often led to some turnovers because once both teams got into half-court sets, it was really, really difficult. And we saw in the second half, both teams made an even greater concerted effort to hunt mismatches, and that's what happens in the playoffs. This had a real playoff feel to it. But the Warriors' defense, which we know had come in second in the league, only behind the Oklahoma City Thunder, credit to Jerry Stackhouse. It was his birthday yesterday, I believe. Credit has to go to him. The way that he has got this defense playing, has got everyone bought in, the intensity in that first half. I cannot recall the Warriors playing better defense against that kind of opposition like in recent years. Like that was unbelievable. And from that point, after the first 5 minutes where the Celtics were up 14-3, the Warriors kept Boston to 26 points for the remainder of the half, turned around an 11-point deficit into an 11-point lead. The last couple of plays of that first half, we had a Moses Moody corner 3 off a beautiful find from Steph, and then Moses getting an offensive rebound and then getting the putback that he banked in there at the buzzer. Warriors take a 51-40 lead at halftime. But of course, Boston weren't going to lie down. This is the reigning champs. This is them on their home floor where they hadn't previously lost this season. They come out in the third quarter and they start making everything. 41 points in the third quarter, led by Jason Tatum, who I think had 17. He was huge. I thought they did a really good job. Like the Warriors in the first half did a fantastic job of double teaming Tatum at the exact right time, getting the ball out of his hands and making other plays. Beat them. White did it early, but other than that, the defensive pressure that the Warriors were applying to Tatum and others was exceptional. And I thought the Celtics just did a better job in the third quarter and in the second half in general of if that double team came, which it never really did from the Warriors. I thought they went away from that probably when they shouldn't have. But when it did and when the ball got out of Tatum's hands, I think he and the Celtics did a good job of getting the ball back in his hands, of him repositioning, finding the ball again. And it wasn't just the threes he was making off the dribble, which often come, but it was him actually taking catch and shoot threes, which, again, the Celtics' ability to find him again after he gave the ball up, I thought was much improved in the third quarter, as opposed to the first half where the Warriors kind of got the ball out of his hands a little bit, and then that was it. You just wouldn't see him for the rest of the possession. So credit to the Celtics. They were always going to come out, start hitting some shots, put up 41 in the third. And then the start of the fourth quarter, it was really the Neemias Queta show. He was making plays on both ends of the floor, putback dunks, slams off, pick and rolls, stuff like that. He blocked Steph one time at the rim, making all these plays. Credit to him. And the Celtics went up by 7 with just over 6 minutes to play. And you thought, okay, I at that point was pretty prepared to go away from this thing. And you know what? The Warriors had an 11-point lead at halftime. They showed they can match it with the Celtics. I'm pretty content with this, if I'm being honest. I'm pretty content with they showed they can match it with the best. Yes, they look like they're going to get overrun, but that's okay. It's an honorable loss. The Warriors were looking headed to an honorable loss. And then they just refused to lie down. Again, as I said before, they stayed calm, they stayed collected, didn't panic, didn't rush at all in that fourth quarter. And we had some huge plays down the stretch. There were quite a few. And I want to start with Looney, because we could look at Steph. Steph has 27, 7 rebounds, 9 assists, 4 steals. He was huge on both ends of the floor in this one. Just as the Celtics were kind of pushing away from the Warriors there in the fourth quarter, there was kind of a series of plays where Wiggins got a layup, I think, and then Steph had 6 quick points. One was off a 3-point shooting foul, which was a little bit contentious. I'm sure Celtics fans wouldn't be happy about that. And then one afterwards where he was left wide open on the wing, where there was, I think, miscommunication between Tatum and either Holiday or White. I can't recall. But he was able to knock that down. So Steph was huge. But Looney, I think he's the story of the game for me. Not that he was, did anything truly spectacular box score wise. He had 6 points, 10 rebounds, only played 16 minutes. But the fact that Kevon Looney was out on the floor at TD Garden against the Boston Celtics, making winning plays at the end of the game, I think is a huge credit to how he's turned his career around in the first 8 games this season. Because we left last season thinking that Kevon Looney's career was well and truly at the crossroads. He had a non-guaranteed or team option on the third and final year of his deal. And there was a genuine possibility that the Warriors were going to either waive that or use it as the major salary in a trade, right? That was a huge possibility. And then even when the Warriors do guarantee his contract, it's okay, probably the right decision because they do need it for salary matching purposes in a trade. They could go and get someone else. His career, at least at the Warriors, was really at the crossroads. And credit to him, all the work that he's put in, the weight he's lost over the offseason, shooting all the threes and stuff like that, which we haven't seen. But I think just getting back to what he was in that championship season, even the season following, in the 2022-23 season where he was really good as well. I absolutely love the fact he was able to come out and make these winning plays at the end, because it's a just reward for him and the work that he's put in. Because, Mike Breen and Doris Burke say on the broadcast there that, right place, right time on a couple of those plays. First of all, Draymond misses a corner 3, airballs it completely. They say airballs go to the offense. It did. Loon, right place, right time, as Mike Breen called, and puts it back home. And then the play following, Steph attacks, gets the rim, misses a layup, falls down. Who's there? Kevon Looney, put back layup, right? Both in the final 2 minutes of the game. And you can say, right place, right time. Yeah, he's right place, right time. But for him to even be on the floor in that situation, that takes hard work back from the offseason, from losing all the weight and getting back in Steve's good books, right? And I found it really interesting late in the game that Steve was going to Steph, Wiggs, and then the front court combination of Draymond and Loon, which I thought was dead and buried. I didn't think we'd see that combination at the end of games ever again. And yet it's like old reliable. Right, it's the old reliable lineup of having Draymond Green, Kevon Looney, Steph, obviously, Wiggins, and then at one point it was GP2, who we know is a bit of a curve favorite for defensive purposes, and then they got Buddy Hield out there on offense, and he had a couple of big buckets, including that corner 3 with 46 seconds to go to extend the lead to 7. So I just credit to Loon, and I kind of want him to be the story of this game with those 2 putback buckets, which was so huge, which was so clutch, and him being in the right spot at the right time. But even to get on the floor and be a viable option in that scenario, goes down to all the hard work that he put in during the offseason. I want to read some of your comments out here. Brody had a few before we started here. This game, oh my, Warriors. I mean, huge. Golden State will be a huge talking point out of this game because, again, not most people, but a lot of people around the league hesitating on what this team could possibly be and who this team is. Based on this game, this has shown the start of the season, no fluke. They've got a newfound identity, and it's largely on defense, where even regardless of Boston's huge third quarter and pretty good fourth quarter offensively as well, the Warriors were able to keep them to 42.7%, I think, shooting from the floor, 35% from three-point range, which we obviously know. Boston, one of, if not the best offensive team in the league. And so for the Warriors to do that, I think, regardless of the second half, I still think the defensive exploits of the Warriors in this game was really the main talking point from a team perspective. Priscilla Guerrero says, such a good game all around. Absolutely. Dublin Marge, big win. D. White, all-time Warriors opponent guard. God, he's a very good player, isn't he? I never expected this when he was traded from the Spurs to the Celtics. I thought, and in that 21-22 season before the two teams met in the finals, I thought, okay, yep, nice role player, good pickup. Not this level of player, though. Not the player that we've seen him become since he arrived in Boston. A huge pickup for them. And they're still the team to beat for me. Even after watching this game, they were without Jaylen Brown and Kristaps Porzingis, two starters, a genuine all-star, all-NBA caliber player in Brown and, a former all-star in Porzingis who's incredibly talented. And just having his shooting threat out there, I think, is so huge for their offense as opposed to playing guys like Keita and Cornette who are not, spacing threats whatsoever. But that shouldn't take away from the Warriors' win. I mean, this was on Boston's home floor and they gave their best punch in the second half and the Warriors responded to it. So impressive. Jason Ewan says Warriors came out to play. They did. You could kind of tell from the outset, yes, things weren't going offensively, but defensively, they were pretty honed in and locked in from the outset. And I think, you even see how Steve reacted to that pass from Steph and how infuriated he was in the second quarter after that play. You could kind of tell that, okay, the Warriors know that this is kind of a huge challenge and that they want to meet it and that they want to make a statement. And they certainly played like it, no doubt. Berserk Monk says, let's go, GG. Brody says, I swear Doris Burke sounded like a hater on the broadcast. I didn't really pick up on that. Berserk Monk says, yeah, Doris was a downer for sure. Okay. I think I actually don't mind her. I think she analyzes the game fairly well. I don't really have any issues. Best Warriors game I've watched since 2022. Yeah, I think in terms of most impressive wins, I think this would have to be, I don't recall, again, this is recency bias, there's no doubt, just, having watched that game in the last couple of hours, but I'm trying to recall last season where, like, you could have big comeback wins and stuff like that, but to beat the reigning champs who had previously lost one game, that was in overtime to the Pacers, to beat them on their home floor, I don't recall the Warriors getting a more impressive win. And we also have to remember the Warriors lost by, 52 to the Celtics at TD Garden last season as well. So, yeah, I don't really recall a more, even, you're saying 2022, so you're going back even a season before that in 2022, 23. I mean, it's an 82-game season. There's obviously so many great wins. There's so many poor losses, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's hard in the heat of the moment right now to remember as an impressive a win as that. Berserk Monk says, Looney's effort has been so good to see. I don't think the Warriors can involve him in trades now. Otherwise, vibes will be ruined. Yeah, I mean, he's always, even if he didn't return to this kind of level of play, he was always going to be a good leadership, good locker room presence. There's absolutely no doubt about that. I think we saw after the Jordan Poole, Draymond Green incident going back to training camp 2022 that afterwards Steve labeled Loon as kind of the moral compass of this team. And I think that does go underrated, his leadership and locker room aspect. But you shouldn't be getting paid $8-9 million just for that. You have to be a meaningful rotation player. And I'm not saying that he's going to regain his spot in the starting lineup. There's going to be games where maybe he doesn't play. He's like DMP against certain matchups. But for him to come out against the best team in the league and to make winning plays down the stretch, couldn't be more happier for him, to be honest. Drew says, great for Warriors' confidence going forward. Absolutely, to know that they can match it, not only match it, but beat the best teams in the league, that is huge. Because again, you look at their 6 wins against Trailblazers and the Jazz. Well, that's the Trailblazers, the Jazz. No, sorry, the Jazz, the Pelicans, and the Wizards are, I think, the 3 worst teams in terms of net rating in the league. Then you have the Trailblazers at 21st, and so 5 of their 6 wins came against teams 21st or worse in net rating, and the 3 worst teams in net rating in the league. And then the only team that's relatively good by net rating that they beat was the Rockets, who currently ranked 7th before today's game. So clearly an issue there with, the Warriors not beating. Now, you can only play who you come up against. I mean, it's not their fault. But this was certainly people hesitating on how good the Warriors could possibly be. And this has dissolved that to some degree. Now, they're still going to have challenges against OKC and Cleveland over these next 2 games, or Cleveland and then OKC to close out the 5-game road trip. And that'll be a challenge. And hopefully they can push on from this and win at least one of those. Maybe both. Maybe I'm getting a bit ahead of myself saying winning both. But, I mean, they've proven now they can beat anyone, right? And it starts on the defensive end and what they did in this one there. Brody says, honestly, I feel like any trade made will dampen the mood in the locker room. It's a tough one because there's so many guys playing so well now that you almost think, okay, well, is this like the time to pull the trigger because the value of some of these players has probably risen a little bit based on early season form. I'm kind of with you. I mean, I still hesitate on the playoff legitimacy of this team without a second star. I do hesitate, and I probably will until I see it in the playoffs, to be totally honest. Like they could win their next 74 games and go 81-1, and I'd still be like, is there going to be enough? But what I saw from this game is that if you can get the game to late in the fourth quarter and it's close, then Steph is still Steph, right? He's still one of the best players, top handful of players in the league. And so if you give him an opportunity, if you give him a chance, if you just say, okay, the game's tied or the game's very close with 5 or 6 minutes left, you give him an opportunity to let him do his stuff, then that gives you a chance still. And so maybe that's just, if the Warriors do make the playoffs, maybe that's their go-to, is that they are going to lean so heavy on defense that all these games are going to be close, and that at the end, they've got one of the biggest and best superstars in the league who can still carry them to victory. And Steph was involved in all these plays. He didn't score all the points down the stretch, but he was involved in all these plays. I spoke about the 6 points he had in those back-to-back possessions, whether it was he had another layup where he had Keita on a switch and went right by him and finished at the rim. He found Buddy Hield on that corner 3. Even the Looney second putback miss came from a Steph miss layup. So Steph involved heavily, and I couldn't be more impressed by the way he's responded from that 3-game absence. It shouldn't amaze me. It shouldn't amaze me with professional athletes, but it often does how well and how effective and how good they come back from even minor injuries, and they can come back and pick up where they left off from, and looks like they really didn't skip a beat too much. And that's what we've seen from Steph in his first 2 games since return. I'm trying to keep up with the comments here. Above the Wave says, Warriors won on 20 fewer 3-point attempts. Amazing team defense. I didn't even realize that differential in 3-point attempts, but that's how the Celtics play. They throw up a heap of threes. That can hurt them sometimes, as it probably did in the first half a little bit, and it can help them at times, as we saw in the third quarter, where they can just make 3 after 3 after 3, and it doesn't really matter what your lead is. Your lead I think the Warriors got up to 14 early in the third quarter. It doesn't matter. They can be out 20 points down, and they can hit so many threes. We saw that late comeback they had against the Pacers where Indiana were up, near 20, and then in the space of 5-6 minutes, the Celtics come back, forced game to overtime, where they ultimately lost. But it just goes to show you the potency of their offense when it's up and running and they're making shots. Berserk Monk says, trades with GP2 and Looney would ruin it, but maybe Melton can be an option to consider. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with DeAnthony Melton once he returns. Steve, once again, went to an 11-man rotation. We saw minutes from Lindy Waters III, which I thought was a little bit surprising, but obviously wanting to get some shooting out there. No Brandon Pajemski in this one, who was out again with that illness. Melton, I think, did some 3-on-3 practice maybe before the game. So I think he'd be relatively close. I wouldn't cast Melton aside. I think Melton's a really good, valuable player. And yes, he's been out for a bit now. And if the back injuries, remain an issue and a concern, then okay, maybe then yes, he's movable. But I think you'll see when he comes back just how valuable this guy can be on both ends of the floor. I looking at what the Warriors are doing with their starting lineup and the fact they've gone away from Kuminga, Moody started in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if Melton comes back as a starter, or at least not initially, but by, if they're not going to be willing to go back to what they started at the start of the season, then I always thought, okay, well, then Melton is the next guy up in terms of being a starter. And I think that would have happened if he hadn't have got injured. And I wouldn't be surprised if, another 5-10 games, we see that lineup of Steph, Melton, Wiggins, Draymond, Trace, or something along those lines. Just having a look here. Brody says Keita was huge for Boston, man. That's the type of big we need on the bench. High energy, big athlete. Yeah, I tend to agree. He's a 7-footer, size, shot blocking ability, can finish in the pick and roll, can finish off lobs. I mean, would he really get, I think it's just an option. I always think the Warriors need a genuine 7-footer just as an option to throw out there. But when you've got TJD and you've got Loon and you've got Draymond playing a number of minutes as a small ball center, Kyle Anderson even as a small ball center option. I mean, how many, unless you're like a really good NBA, like a guy like Neemias Keita, how many minutes would he see for the Warriors? That's kind of my question. How many minutes would he see? I'm not sure he'd see that many, but you're probably right in saying, you could at least have that option would be nice. Berserk Monk says, also on the trade front, let's say we do a 4+ player trade for Giannis, cutting that depth down definitely alters this current defensive effort. That's a good point, actually. The fact that the Warriors are going 12 deep in their rotation, or 11 in this one without Podziemski and Melton, it allows guys to come in knowing full well that, okay, I'm probably only going to play 5-6 minutes a year. I need to make high impact, and therefore I can go as hard as I want defensively, rather than having an 8-9 man rotation where you think, okay, I'm playing big minutes, I can't go 110%. I've actually got to manage myself a little bit here, and maybe I'll take this play off defensively, and oops, I didn't make that rotation. Oh, I didn't hustle for that defensive rebound. They got an offensive rebound put back. All these kind of different effort plays, which, short 8-9 man rotations, starters playing 35+ minutes a game, they have to manage themselves, right, to get through games. As a lot of these guys for the Warriors are playing, I mean, just having a look at the minutes here, again, in this one, we saw Draymond, Wiggs, Steph all play 30+. Interesting to see Steph, no minutes restriction, obviously 24-minute restriction against the Wizards, plays over 34 here, so that just was a one-game thing. But then aside from those three guys, Buddy played 28.5, and then TJD 16 in a starting role, Moody just over 13 in a starting role, GP2 just over 18, Looney nearly 16, Kuminga just under 18, which is a bit of a talking point. Kyle Anderson nearly 20, just under that, and Lindy Waters just under 14. So you got all those guys playing kind of between 14 and 20 minutes. And when those guys come in, they can just have high impact, go all out on both ends of the floor, but particularly defensively, hustling, making plays, hassling guys. So I think it's a really good point you bring up in terms of that. I would still, if Giannis is available, I'd still, look at doing that. There's no doubt about that. But the complexities, I think I might do a different podcast episode maybe on a potential Giannis trade and what that may look like, and what the Warriors may look like after that trade, how they'd kind of complete the rest of their roster, because there's so many different complexities to that. But it's certainly something to monitor with how the Bucks have started this season, no doubt about that. FTW Clan says, I feel like the way we are playing with so much defensive intensity is due to our depth, and I love the versatility we have for all potential matchups. Yep, well, that's pretty much just what Berserk Monk said in terms of that depth, allowing players to go hard on that end of the floor and really give their all, as I just spoke about. Berserk Monk says, I like Melton for sure. It's just the durability factor between him and GP2. Maybe the Warriors' plans are to play one when the other is dealing with injuries. Well, yeah, they are similar-ish players. I think GP2 is maybe a slightly better defender, and then Melton's clearly a better outside shooter. Probably just a better. I actually think Melton's a better player than GP2. I do think, and I think When they're both healthy and available, I'd expect Melton to play significantly more minutes than GP2. But yeah, I mean, they've both had their injury concerns over the last couple of years. And so you're right. How many times are you going to have access to both players? So I've been impressed with GP2. I'm not trying to disparage him by saying that Melton's a significantly better player. I think that says more about how I value Melton and how impactful a player I think he is, as opposed to GP2, who I've been impressed with. Like him and Looney, I just thought they were done at the end of last season. I thought, okay, yeah, like they're done. How much more, like they're going to be filling guys, maybe, guys that can come in and make an impact every now and again, fill in when there's injuries, that kind of thing. But no, they're like genuine rotation players again who deserve to play 15 plus minutes a game. And there's probably times where they're not going to be able to again because of the depth of the roster. But credit to those guys for bouncing back, and GP2 looks healthy, which is fantastic to see based on what we've seen, which has been disappointing in terms of his body in the last 2 years. Above the wave says Slow-Mo was playing some backup PG with Pods and Melton. Now did a solid job, those threes in the first half. Yeah, can we talk about that for a second? Just what the game needed. Game really struggling offensively, and what would you expect to brighten it up and lighten it up? Well, Kyle Anderson, 3 threes in a row is exactly what you would have expected. Not really, but that was. I was actually thinking about it at the time. I was like, okay, well, that's just never going to happen again for the rest of the season. Kyle Anderson's not going to make 3 threes in 3 straight possessions for the rest of the season. That's just not going to happen. But it's kind of goes down to this Warriors team and the depth where every player is capable of doing things. Like they're all good basketball players, and therefore they're all capable of something out of the box, right? Like Kyle Anderson going for 3 threes in a row. Okay, you might only get that once a season, but it's still capable of happening, obviously. Kevon Looney getting 2 putback baskets in the last 2 minutes of the game in clutch time. Okay, well, yeah, that can happen. Like, you don't expect these things to happen, but these are like good basketball players. And I think it just goes down to the fact that, hey, the Warriors might not have that second star. They might not have that guy who's going for 25 plus points every game, but they have a bunch of good players, and Steve can just ride whoever's playing well on any given night. And you're going to get these different, weird production from players, but it's going to happen consistently over the course of the season where Melton's going to come back and, early on he's going to have a random 20-point game. Like I could almost guarantee it. He's going to have a game where he goes off and makes like 5 or 6 threes and has 20, 25 points. Like he's capable of that. Would I expect it every game? No. And that's the thing. Like they don't have this second star where you expect him to score 25 plus points, but they have so many different contributors that, yes, it's surprising when Kyle Anderson goes for 3 threes in a row, but it almost like that's kind of what the Warriors are getting at in terms of their depth. Is like, hey, we've got so many guys that can contribute and produce in so many different elements that's kind of what we're banking on. Not like we're not banking on Kyle Anderson making 3 straight threes, but I hope you kind of get what I'm talking about there in terms of the depth and just having good basketball players who are capable of being on the floor for starters and then producing out of the box things at certain times. And Steve can just ride the wave of whoever's playing well on any given night. So, yeah. I mean, such an impressive. I just think, like, not just the fact they won by 6, but the fact they found themselves down 7 halfway through that fourth quarter. They took a huge Celtics punch. I think most teams would have folded in that scenario and thought, you know what? We're up 11 on the Celtics at halftime on their home floor. That's a good effort. We can walk away, head high, honorable loss. And I wouldn't have blamed the Warriors, right, if that was the case. I would have been disappointed, but I wouldn't have blamed them, and I would have been content, right? But instead, they get back off the canvas and they stand up, make plays, win the game by 6. 13-point turnaround there in the last 6 minutes and 9 seconds, I think it was. Berserk Monk says, yeah, Slow-Mo is going to keep getting those open looks. There'll be nights when he goes like 0-4 on those shots, but he needs to keep taking them to keep the defense honest. Absolutely. Him, like Draymond, I think missed all 3 of his 3-point attempts in this one, but he started off the season shooting hot. He's another guy where it's like, okay, you're going to have nights like this where you airball 1 and you go 0-3, 0-4. But there's other nights like we saw against the Wizards where he goes, was it 3 or 4, 3 or 5 from 3-point range. So I thought Draymond had another reasonable game. So he went 0-4 from 3-point range, I should say. He had 9 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Thought defensively was, again, pretty good. I was a bit disappointed. There was a play there, and I kind of circled it because I thought, oh, gee, that could come back to haunt us a little bit, where he kind of closed out to Drew Holiday a little bit awkwardly and just allowed Drew Holiday to get by him for an open layup at the rim. And I thought, that's very unlike Draymond. Like, how many times do you see Draymond just, allow a guy to go by him off the dribble like that and get literally an uncontested layup at the rim? Like, how many times do you see that? You just don't. And for that to happen in the last 5 minutes, I thought, oh, geez, that could, if we only lose by a point or two here, that could be something that I look back at and think that was really big. But otherwise, solid, clutch free throws down the stretch. For him and Wiggins to go 5 of 6 in those last 40 seconds combined. Like, when those guys got fouled, I was like, oh, geez. The Warriors went into this one the worst team in the league in free throw shooting percentage-wise, but they end up going 20 of 24, 83.3% in this one. And having Steph back, Steph hasn't missed this season, 7 of 7. Obviously, being ranked last in free throw shooting percentage has to be taken into some context, given that Steph obviously missed 3 of those games and only been averaging 25 minutes in the other 4 games he played. So that will certainly go up. They won't remain the worst ranked free throw shooting team in the league, but just to see Draymond and Wiggs step up confidently and knock down 5 of 6 combined in the last 40 seconds there, because again, the Celtics made a couple of shots. Horford made that, after that Buddy Hield 3, Horford came out straight away and made that tough 3 off the dribble. And then Steph fouled Pritchard on a 3 with 15 seconds left, which made the margin 3. Draymond misses the first, so you're thinking, oh, God, this is kind of set up for him to, especially with what we saw, with the Warriors last season, where they choked so many games with silly stuff in the last 15, 20 seconds. When Draymond missed that first free throw, it's just like, oh, God. He's going to miss the second one now, and the Celtics are going to make a BS 3 down the other end, and we're going to go to overtime again for the second straight game or something like that. I just thought that was going to be on the cards, and maybe it's a sign of the change in this team, the fact that Draymond calmly made the second and just gave the shush signal to the Celtics crowd. That was good to see. So, clutch from him and Wiggs down the stretch. Gamer F2P says, good night. Seems like my 4-0 will come through. To be honest, I like Draymond giving up layup than the 3-pointer. Yeah, but let me just check the play-by-play on that because it wasn't at the end of the game. Like, it was with 3 or 4 minutes to go, I think. Just checking here. Sorry. Holiday driving layup. Yeah, 5 minutes to go. 5 minutes to go when the Celtics were up 2, and then Holiday got them up 4 with 5 minutes to go with that layup. Steph came straight back down the other end and made a 3, so that kind of made up for it. But I thought at that point, putting them up 4, that, okay, that's not a great defensive play by Draymond. Can we talk a hot minute on Wiggins playing a wide open layup? That was incredible. Like, I would have made that. And I've not been playing well at all in social basketball recently, but I think us, we would have made that. That was I think he got confused with either I think he was thinking about banking it in, and then he kind of changed to no, I'll just kind of finger roll lay it in, and then he just got confused between the two, and then he just missed the layup. Like, he would have made that 999 times out of 1,000, and just that one that he missed. That was. Imagine losing the game by. I'm not sure what happened, because I think there was a jump ball, wasn't it? There was a jump ball between him and Horford, and Horford won it. So the Warriors got 0 points on that possession. If we'd lost that game by a point or two, I know you can look back at so many things, but you look back at that Wiggins blown layup and just think, like, what the hell was going on? NVX Hunter says, hey, just got here. How do you think the Cavs game going to go? Cavs have been really impressive. I think they won again today. Just checking the scores here. Yep, they beat the Pelicans by 9. I'm just going to check some of the stats there. They're tough. They're tough. Going to be good to see Kenny Atkinson, who is obviously a big part of the Warriors over the previous 3 seasons, and he's doing a great job with the Cavs, who are now 9-0, if you don't mind, taking down the Pelicans in New Orleans. 29 for Donovan Mitchell. Allen, 16, 14 rebounds. Mobley, 15, 9, and 3. I've been so impressed with Evan Mobley. I think he's the one that's starting to take a step. And I've always seen him as, okay, Mitchell is who he is, Garland is who he is, Jared Allen is who he is. If the Cavs are to take the next step in terms of being, a genuine contender in the East, of getting out of the East, challenging Boston, then I think it's Mobley. I think it's Mobley who has to take that step to being a bona fide all-star and probably an all-NBA caliber player. And I think he had that play the other day where it was like a block and then got the rebound and pushed the ball in transition and then had a massive slam. And it was just like, saw a lot of people commenting from that saying, was that Giannis basically? It was a Giannis like play on both ends of the floor. And I think he's really starting to take that step. And that's probably going to propel Cleveland to a whole new level that they probably couldn't otherwise have got to, even with Kenny. And I think Kenny probably has to take some credit for this Mobley leap as well. I would like to see him start taking a few more threes. I think that's the next evolution of his game. We saw it a little bit in the playoffs last season, a little bit to start this season, but today he only takes 0 of 1. But they're going to be a great regular season team because they've got some pretty good depth there coming. Like Karis LeVert's playing really well off the bench. He had another 16 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists today. So he's playing really well. Sam Merrill, one of, not a guy that's well known necessarily across the league, but just a lights out shooter, such a dangerous shooter off the bench. Ty Jerome's playing a little bit, former Warrior, shout out there, had 11 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals. He's like, I like Ty Jerome. The Warriors were trying to keep Ty Jerome when they lost him after that one season in 2022-23. I think they extended a qualifying offer or something. Anyway, something happened where they were trying to keep him, but he walked to the Cavs on a bigger offer because I think the Warriors are probably only going to try and bring him back on a minimum. And instead, I think he got a $5 million deal or something per season from the Cavs. A bit injury plagued in his first year, but he's come out and playing a genuine role for them. So, the Cavs are a dangerous team. Not dangerous team. They're just a bloody good team. Like that's all you can say. They're 9-0 for a reason, and they're going to go into that game as strong favourites. But the Warriors just proved with beating the Celtics that they are more than capable of beating the Cavs on their home floor. Just looking, Gamer F2P says Wiggins could have dunked it, made a highlight. That's why I like JK. Yeah, he probably should have dunked it. I don't know. Outside of that, I like what Wiggs. Yes, he's been missing some shots. Like he goes 6 of 14 today. I think, he didn't shoot the ball well against the Wizards the other day. But generally this season, I just think he looks much more engaged and active on both ends of the floor. And even when he's missing shots, I think you can still kind of tell that he's involved in the game at least. And yeah, he's engaged and active. And I think that's a huge positive sign in the fact that he was able to make some plays in the fourth quarter. He's gone. The big play that I want to refer to in terms of Wiggs in that fourth quarter was the step back on Tatum, where he's going to give the ball up to Steph. Kind of good ball denial from the Celtics. Wiggins had the ball like 10 seconds or so on the shot clock. Tatum 1-on-1, and Wiggs kind of dribbles towards the inside, towards the paint, step back over Tatum, mid-range jumper, nothing but net. And you're like, whoa, okay. Like, this is the Andrew Wiggins we need to try and take some of the burden off Steph. Like, this is the one-on-one shot creation that Wiggs needs to deliver, which I think hasn't necessarily been there over the last couple of seasons. And yes, you think of him as this, ideal 3-and-D wing where he's, catch and shoot guy on the perimeter and then guarding the opposition's best defense. But the Warriors are going to need Wiggs, especially in fourth quarters, late in games against elite defenses. They're going to need some of that one-on-one shot creation, which, he's been known for going back to his days. Obviously, he's the number 1 overall pick in Minnesota. I thought that was a huge play and a really notable one for me to see, okay, yep, you've still got that. You can still be kind of that go-to guy where 10 seconds left on the shot clock, Wiggs can go make a play and get a bucket. I think that was big. I think that Gamer F2P says, I think that Wiggins missed Bunny going to be on Shaq and a fool, but don't quote me on that. It definitely will be, no doubt about that. Berserk Monk said Wiggins not dunking it maybe signals he doesn't trust his lower back. I don't know. Maybe you got to. Can I divulge in myself for a little bit here? So I've had a strained. It's called a strained annula, which is something in your back. which has been quite painful over the last couple of months. Kind of starts in lower back and goes down into the hamstring. Anyway, I've come back the last 3 games I've played social league basketball on a Tuesday, and I've just genuinely fell into imitating Ben Simmons. Like, it is uncanny how much I'm playing like Ben Simmons at the moment, social league basketball wise, where I was the only guy on the floor on Tuesday night, only guy on the floor for our team who didn't score. We played it and lost by 10 in a game we should have won easily, I would have thought. And I don't know, I was talking to a mate about it, and I said I've literally turned into Ben Simmons, where I rebound the ball okay. Like, I'll finish off with a stat line of like 0, 8, and 8. I took two shots on Tuesday night. And he actually said to me, he's like, "Oh, do you reckon it's your back? Like, do you reckon that's an issue?" And I said, "No, like, I don't feel it at all. When I'm out there, I feel completely fine and I don't worry about it at all." And he said, "Oh, but maybe it's a subconscious thing where your body is trying to protect yourself. And that's why you're not playing like you normally do." Because, I think we played that team start of the season. I scored like 23 points. And then Tuesday night, same opposition, I took 2 shots. I didn't even look at the rim. Every time I get into paint, it's like, all right, let me get into a Euro step. And then instead of putting it up, I'll just kick it out to a shooter kind of thing. Not that we have really any shooters. It's social league basketball. But that's, and I wonder if that's a thing for Wiggins. Do you sympathize with Ben Simmons more now, Brody asks? I kind of do, but also the Ben Simmons stuff, started before he had a back injury. I think, like, the play obviously against Atlanta in that playoff series, at the end of, what was it, game 6 or game 7, whatever it was, in Philly. I think that was before his back injuries, I believe. And so I think it's more so a mental thing, but I think the back issues would certainly, I just think Ben's not as athletic as what he was, but it's kind of uncanny. Like, he's Australian, I'm Australian, he's left-handed, I'm left-handed. Both kind of suspect jump shots, don't really take shots from the outside. I can't remember. I don't think I've taken a mid-range jump shot since I've returned. Like, I don't think I've taken a shot outside of the paint since I returned 3 weeks ago. So it's literally uncanny how much I'm similar to Ben Simmons right now. NVX Hunter says, Wiggins' defense on Tatum tonight was amazing. Seems like he's back even on his off nights. Offensively, plays hard and contributes in other ways. Agree with that. Absolutely. And again, that's why I go down to the fact that, he's going to have nights where, like against the Wizards, like here a bit, where he doesn't necessarily make a heap of shots, but he just looks like he's impacting the game in other ways, and he looks active and engaged. Brody says, as a Kiwi, I'd love to see Ben Simmons get back to all-star form. Always got to root for the Aussies and Kiwi in the league. I mean, I'm still a Ben fan. I'm still holding out hope for him. Obviously, I don't think he's ever going to return to being an all-star at all, but I think once he gets off this contract, he's obviously on an expiring deal now. I think that I think we can start looking at him a little bit differently as of next season, assuming he gets a deal somewhere else or with Brooklyn. If he's on a minimum contract or less than $10 million, then we can start evaluating him a little bit differently to a guy who's making $40 million, right? I think that's going to be a big moment for him, and maybe just relieve some of the burden a little bit as well. Some of the pressures that come with being like a max guy, which he was after his rookie contract. So, I don't think he's necessarily going to be a fit for the Warriors moving forward. With Draymond still there, there's too much overlapping, and the Warriors need more spacing in the front court, not less. And they've got Kyle Anderson, who's just a better player than Simmons at this point. So I think, not necessarily the Warriors, but I think he could do, some handy stuff elsewhere. But hopefully he can finish out the season strong in Brooklyn. Brody says, honestly, would be a mean pickup for the Warriors. I know Bill Simmons mentioned it, I think, as a potential buyout candidate in February if the last year of his deal gets bought out from the Nets and he becomes a buyout candidate. I don't see it. I personally don't see it with Kyle Anderson and Draymond, who are just both better, more trusted players, I think, at this point. Now, Draymond's getting on. He's going to be 35 early next year. Maybe you could bring Simmons in. I don't know. I mean, it'd be worth a gamble maybe on a minimum. Be worth a gamble. Like, what is there to lose in that scenario? Anyway, good luck to Ben Simmons. Good luck to all the Aussies in the league. Good luck to Steven Adams. Found it funny how on the Rockets thing, Jock Landale was asked, I think, about Steven Adams and playing with a fellow Aussie, and Jock Landale said, no, he's a Kiwi. Brody says Draymond's apprentice. I mean, Ben's pretty old himself now. He's I mean, he hasn't obviously played a lot in the last few years. And maybe Draymond can teach everyone plenty, and maybe he can teach Ben plenty as well. And playing alongside Steph, Buddy Hield, that could certainly make a difference. Like, the Nets certainly don't have that caliber of shooter. Like, Cam Johnson's a good shooter. Cam Thomas is going off, but neither of those guys are the shooter of Steph and Buddy Hield. So maybe that would. Brody says he still feels 24. Yeah, I mean, he just hasn't played, unfortunately. Anyway, we're getting off topic here, talking about Ben Simmons, my basketball career, everything like that. So I might finish it up. Thank you, Brody, for your comments, and everyone else that was in the live stream. Warriors now have the Cavs and obviously the Thunder to close out their 5-game road trip. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, that would be greatly appreciated. You can follow me at POK252. That's POK252 on X/Twitter. We're also on Instagram, TikTok, Golden State with Mates. You can check out clips there. I'll probably be back for another post-game live after in fact, I might even do an episode tomorrow just on some of the Giannis stuff. So maybe be on the lookout for that, and then probably a post-game live after the Cavaliers game. Thank you to Envy and Brody there for the compliments in the chat. Other than that, yep, post-game live probably after the Cavs. Let's hope it's another impressive Warriors win. This one today, 118-112 over the Celtics. Couldn't have been more impressive. Just a fantastic performance, and let's hope it continues with the Warriors now 7-1 on the season. Until next time.